Up on the ramp today, I've got my new to me 2021 Nissan Navara NP300 pickup. And on this video, I'm going to treat the underbody to some rust protection. So this Navara is now 4 years and 2 months old, and it's done 52,000 miles. And the chassis on this isn't too bad. There's a bit of surface rust starting to form. If I just turn my torch on there, you can see it's starting to go a bit rusty, but my main concern is what's inside the chassis. So I'm going to be putting rust protection through all these holes to try to treat it from the inside. The earlier Navara was notorious for chassis rust. In fact, the chassis used to snap on those when they got too bad, and that's why I want to treat this one, because this is going to be a tow vehicle and I might well be keeping it for a long time. So while it's still in reasonably good condition, I want to get this one treated so it has a long life. And the products I'm going to be using for this are the Bilt Hamber products. So I'm going to use Hydrate-80 as an initial rust converter and just paint that on any surface rust. And then I'm going to use Dynax-UB, and this is a firm film anti-corrosion wax, and that's what I'm going to treat the chassis to, both inside and out. I've also got some new aerosol cans of Dynax-UB on their way to me, which aren't here yet, so I'll talk more about the products and how you apply them a bit later on in the video. So first off, the preparation, and obviously with all jobs, preparation is key. So I have washed all of the underside with a pressure washer, and I've got this right angled lance, and this is great for getting underneath because you can just leave this resting on the ground and slide that underneath the vehicle, and it gives it a thorough clean. And you can also get behind the wheels and up into the suspension and also up round the wheel arches. And I gave this a real thorough wash with the pressure washer, but it doesn't get it all off. It's surprising how much mud can still stick in certain cavities, particularly on the inside edge of the wheel arches. You can run your fingers around there, and even though the mud can be wet, you can still pull out lumps of dry mud and sand. And I was as thorough as I could be with this. I was doing it for ages. So the next stage is really let it drip dry and then get in here with an airline. And I've found using an airline is more effective than using the pressure washer. So I've got this long nozzle here, and this is great at getting inside the box sections. And I've managed to push that right in and blow an awful lot of grit out of the chassis rails and also up between the panels. And obviously it works better when it's dry. So I used this to dry the vehicle last night when it was wet, and then today I've been going around a second time, and I've blasted an awful lot of grit out of this vehicle. There's many places on the track that the dirt collects and only an airline will get it out, like inside there. And up around your AdBlue and diesel lines on both sides. And then also in the seam here. And in just 20 seconds or so, got all that new wet mud out from there, with about the same all over my face. So ultimately, I think using the air gun with a long tip nozzle like this is more effective than using a pressure washer, and also your vehicle's dry, so you can get on to the next stage straight away. So as you can see, I've removed the spare wheel here, and as I do this job, I will be removing the individual wheels so I can properly get to the chassis box section on each side. But generally this vehicle is still in pretty good condition. There's just some surface rust forming, but I really want to get the chassis properly protected on the inside. So before I go any further, let's show you what it currently looks like. So the first job is I'm going to use this Bilt Hamber Hydrate-80, and this is a rust converter product. So I'm just going to paint this on to any surface rust, and this is just brilliant stuff, and you can just be quite liberal with this, dab it on, brush it into any surface rust, and it will just convert it to a nice black glossy finish. While I'm under here, I'm even going to do the exhaust as well to extend the life of this a little bit. So that's pretty much all that I've got to do with the Hydrate-80. It's mostly just the seams, anywhere where there's any surface rust. So overnight, all of this blue will turn black. Actually, it only takes a few hours because this is turning black already. I have a tow bar coming tomorrow, so I'm going to fit that first before I coat the underbody with the Dynax-UB, because then I'm going to spray the whole chassis and the tow bar all in one go. So the final stage is to use the Bilt Hamber Dynax-UB, and you can buy this in different types of tins and sizes, but the actual product in size does vary depending on how you buy it. And I have a video already on the channel explaining all of that and explaining which one will probably be best for you. But in this case today, I'm going to use this 5 litre version to spray onto the chassis with an air gun. And I have bought 2 new tins of the aerosol version, which I'm going to use to spray inside the box sections. So for the majority of people, the home DIYers, you're probably just going to want these aerosol cans. And for a vehicle of this size, I would suggest you need at least 5 cans. You'll probably use 2 cans for spraying the inside of the chassis rails, and then 3 cans for spraying the outside surfaces. And these tins look very large, but they've actually only got 750 millilitres of product in, because they have a lot of gas in there, and that allows you to use the tin upside down. I bought these 2 tins because traditionally they would have come with a really long straw like that, and it's got a 360-degree nozzle on the end. And this is really good at poking in a hole in the chassis all the way, and then pressing down on the aerosol and then slowly pulling it back, and that's going to coat all sides of the internal box section, and then poke it in the other way and then do the same. However, in this case, these 2 tins just came with a normal straw. And while that is going to do a similar thing, obviously it's not going to reach so far and not do such a good job. I don't know whether that's a picking error, or whether they've stopped supplying these, or whether this is now a separate product. So what we need to do is obviously give these a really good shake, and also read the instructions, because what it says here is it's far better to give it a very fine mist coat and build the product up over multiple layers than just spraying it on thick in one go. So overnight I've been soaking this old straw I had in white spirit to see whether I could unblock it, because it was certainly blocked up with dried product this end. So let's see whether my unblocked straw is going to work. So I can get that in there. It is brilliant. And then the same the other direction. So I'm going to go around the whole car now, poking this in every hole in the chassis that I can find. So that's the chassis rails and cross members all sprayed with one coat, and I've used exactly 1 tin, but it's quite difficult not to just hold the trigger and spray loads in. So I'm going to let that dry for a bit and then give it a second coat with a second tin. So you are going to need 2 tins at least to do all the internals, and that's why I've got a 5 litre bottle to spray all the externals and inside the wheel arches and all those sort of areas. That's the 2 tins used, spraying the inside of any box sections. And you may have noticed the surface rust treatment with the Hydrate-80, which is now dried, and it's sort of gone black. However, it hasn't done such a good job as I've experienced in the past, so maybe my bottle is getting a bit old and maybe it's a bit contaminated, because previously it's done a much better job than this. But anyway, it doesn't really matter because I'm going to spray the whole lot now with the Dynax-UB. And you may also notice the tow bars now fitted. So if you want to find out more about that, there's a separate video on the channel on that. Around 94% of the viewers of this channel are not subscribed. I'm sorry to ask, but it would help greatly if you would. Just press the subscribe button. It's free and it shows YouTube you like this vehicle related content. If you want to be notified when new videos are released, click on the bell button also. Thank you. It really helps more than you would imagine. On my previous vehicle, when I sprayed the underside with this Dynax-UB, I did it by hand and I used this hand trigger. But to get this through that, I had to dilute this with white spirit, which I've covered in that previous video. But this time I'm going to use the airline because I found I had this spray gun. This is a cheaper nasty one though. It came as a free set when I bought a compressor, and it had a few air tools, and most of them I chucked in the bin. They're not up to much, and this I chucked in a box and I'd forgotten I had it. The nozzle is a bit crude on this, but anyway, for this job I suspect it will work quite well. If you don't have a spray gun or a hand trigger, you can apply this with a brush. However, when using a brush it's quite difficult to get into all the nooks and crannies or above the box section. And of course when you're spraying you can also poke it in the holes and get more inside the chassis. And then let's look at the instructions. So you can apply with a brush or roller, apply to a dry surface free of loose flaky rust or coatings. Dynax-UB will vary in consistency with temperature. It may appear to have a soft grainy appearance to a firm gel. Apply at least 2 coats to the surface at 24-hour intervals. The first primes the surface and allows subsequent coats to build up a higher film thickness. Dynax-UB will provide excellent protection at a wide range of film thicknesses, aimed to achieve a uniform dry film thickness of around 80 to 100 microns. Dynax-UB can be thinned using white spirit if required at 5 to 15%. So the key message I guess there is to spray it on as thin as possible, allow it to dry and build up those thin coats rather than slapping it on thick in the first place. And those thin coats will stop it running, dripping on the floor, ruining your drive and wasting the product. So this does look rather thick, so I'm going to add a dash of white spirit to thin that down a bit. So I was really looking forward to using this, but this is a complete fail. I've now discovered this is the wrong sort of gun. A gun like this doesn't pick up the thick product from the container, and you need to buy one with a pressurized container that's designed for using with undercoatings. So I'm going to jump on Amazon and see if I can get something delivered for the morning. I've now got my new underbody air gun, and thanks to Amazon this turned up the following day. And what's more amazing is it's a Sunday today and this had free before 1 o'clock delivery, and it actually turned up at 7:15 in the morning on a Sunday morning, and we are at least an hour away from the Amazon distribution centre where this came from. So I'll just assemble this and then I can get on with the spraying. But I should have bought this in the first place because this was only £30, which was the same price roughly as these 2 rattle cans. And I only bought these because they have the long straw to get inside the box sections. But this kit has that as well. So I should have bought the right tools in the first place, as always, but you learn by your mistakes. But anyway, in the future, I've got this, and then I'll just buy the 5-litre version, and then I can obviously do everything with that. And this is a lot cheaper if you buy it in bulk than buying the tins. So this truck is pretty much done, but I have just tried injecting the cavities using this 360-degree hose that came with this air gun, but this is useless. Just air is coming out of here. Even though the product is getting down the straw, it seems to be getting blocked here and not coming through the nozzles. Even though the nozzles are quite big, so I don't know why. And I have thinned it with white spirit as well, but it just isn't coming out. It's just getting air. So overall, I found this air gun to be absolutely useless. It's so risky using it because the tin falls off, doesn't lock into that base properly. But anyway, I've got a new air gun coming. So my advice would be to buy that one, which I'll link in the video description below. And I'll do a review of that, because when that one comes, I will redo the inner box sections again. But anyway, to do a Navara, I have found that you pretty much need the full 5 litres of Dynax-UB, and I was diluting it a little bit with a splash of white spirit every time in the spray cup over there. And I certainly shouldn't have bothered with the spray tins just for that straw, which actually didn't come with them anyway, did it? But anyway, the cost of 2 of those is about the same as buying a gun. So if you've got an air compressor, just buy the spray gun, 5 litres of that, and that's more than enough to do your vehicle. But if you haven't got a compressor, obviously you'll be buying the aerosol tins. And I would guess you're going to need probably 8 of these. These are 750 millilitres, and a 5 litre tub does the vehicle. So yeah, you're going to want 7 or 8 of these at least, I would have thought. But there's a chance you'll put it on thinner with this, which is probably better, because initially, certainly anyway, I was putting this on too thick when I was spraying it. Oh, and the other thing I should mention is I haven't taken the wheels off yet. I've managed to do all of this with the wheels in situ, even though I probably said a few times in the video that I was about to take the wheels off. I never did. Fortunately, I've got a lift, so I was able to drop the lift and spray from above, and obviously spray underneath, and I've managed to get to all the chassis rails without taking the wheels off. Obviously this job is a lot easier with the lift, but as you don't need to take the wheels off, you could do this on your driveway, and you could drive one side up on a curb or some concrete blocks or something, and that would give you enough room to get underneath and at least do half the side and then turn around and do the other side. But it is a messy job. There's a lot of overspray, and everything I touch is sticky, so I'm going to have to go around and clean everything up with some white spirit. I've also fitted this new tow bar while I've been doing the job, and the video on that is on the channel already, and I've also waxed that as well. And I've put it on really thick at the back of the tow bar because the exhaust blows there, so it'll be interesting to see how long that lasts. And while we're talking about exhaust, there's a lot of overspray on this exhaust obviously, and that's going to burn off, so the first time I use this is going to stink a bit. So all the links to the products I've used and the tools and where to buy them from will be in the video description below. So I hope you found that video useful. If you have, please do click the thumbs up, that really does help. And I will leave you with some shots of what it looks like underneath now.